Story 1. I have an only child. Her roughhousing skills are below par. We have family friends with 3 daughters around her age, and I tell her not to get involved in their disagreements because they will engage in physical conflicts. Story 2. They panic when siblings act like siblings. Oh my God. I can't believe you talk to your sister that way. You should apologize. What if she thinks you hate her? Listen, I'm the only one who can talk to her like that. This is how we keep our relationship alive. My brother-in-law is an only child, and he still gets a shock. I've gotten several comments asking how my brother-in-law doesn't have siblings. He is my sister's husband. He is, in fact, an only child. Story 3. As an only child, I'd say the struggle with conflict is either all or nothing because the only daily conflict you witness is your parents, and they can often go under the radar with minor conflict. So you're only exposed to major disagreements and think all disagreements go like that, whereas people with siblings know when to fight or just get over stuff. Story 4. My wife was an only child, and one thing I notice is that she doesn't quite have the same perspective of personal space that people with siblings do. For example, our bathroom has 2 sinks and 2 drawers. My multiple sibling mind says, there are 2 of us, 1 sink each, 1 drawer each. Her only child mind thinks it is all open, brushing her teeth in whatever sink, putting stuff in whatever drawer, etc. When you have siblings, you have to fight for your drawer, but when you are an only child, it is just a drawer. Story 5. As an only child, the biggest difference I've noticed is I seem to value my friendships more than most. My friends are quite literally what I value the most in my life. Story 6. As an only child, now an adult, I crave my me time to do whatever it is that I do. I also don't like people, such as my husband, kids, and grandkids, to touch my stuff. I will buy you what I have, but please don't touch my stuff. I don't understand the concept of borrowing something. Story 7. Several comments here ring true for me as an adult only child and now orphan. I like sharing food and would rather give my loved ones extra helpings than take a full helping myself. The adult friends who had siblings and still fight over food kind of weird me out. That said, I often save my very last bite for my favorite morsel. A raspberry, the perfect asparagus tip, the best slice of a steak. If someone I love snatches that part, my meal is nearly ruined in quiet despair. You learn to cherish the little things. Adults were funny and intriguing, as were grown-up meals, restaurants, films, and stores. Kids were weird, belligerent, and cruel because I was super weird and had no clue how to deal with roughhousing. I cannot stop hitting myself for I am not, in fact, hitting myself. As for my significant other, you can tell he was an only child because he had every Star Wars and Masters of the Universe playset, yes, even Eternia. And he still does because his parents have kept everything he had in storage. In other news, if anyone is looking for a used Eternia with a monorail track that needs repair, please let me know. Comes in a refrigerator-sized box. Story 8. I have a much stronger aversion to gentle bullying than my partners who have siblings. I also have much thinner emotional skin than they do, and I am working on that. I attended daycare and school from a young age, but my parents were also 40 when they had me, so I matured quickly. Story 9. They adopt their friends as siblings and will call you their brother or sister. At least I do. I always wanted siblings growing up, but my mom had a lot of miscarriages, so I ended up a lonely only. Story 10. Might just be me, but as an only child I'm guilty of long-winded, emotional paragraph dumps. I don't have anyone frequently accessible to vent to, so I save up my social energy and unload on an unsuspecting friend all at once. Sometimes I'll look at the wall of text I just sent and be like, damn it, I did it again. Story 11. My observation is that people who grew up as the only child in the family do not rush while eating. When dining out with several of my acquaintances who grew up as the only child, I notice that they eat their meals slowly and enjoy every bite, while I, coming from a large family, devour my portion like a wild animal. Story 12. They do not play politics. They do not need attention because they have never had to share it, so they do not fight for it. Siblings usually have a constant Game of Thrones in play with rivalries, resentments, and shifting alliances. This mentality persists in your work life, among friends, and as an adult with your own family. Only children can be blind to this kind of jockeying and end up missing the action, but also being immune to drama. Story 13. My favorite people are only children. My husband, 3 of my closest friends, and my oldest child, sort of 16-year age difference. The kid didn't grow up with any siblings. The people that I know who are only children all have a certain self-assuredness, and I admire and appreciate it. I'm not saying they're selfish, they're all very thoughtful, and that probably has more to do with me liking thoughtful people and not whether or not they have siblings. But they just have a strong sense of self and aren't afraid to speak up or be different. Story 14. It gets pretty lonely. You grow up as a minority surrounded by kids and people with siblings, and you wish you could have had that luck. You also have to grow up taking in and swallowing anything and everything your awful parents throw at you because there's no one else to share the pain with. At least from my own personal experience, you also grow up very protective and almost like a big sibling or parent, as if you were trying to make up for the fact you had no one to take care of growing up. Silence is sacred. Story 15. Only child and grandchild here. We have a hard time sharing stuff, is what I would say. Get along with adults more or older people. We're more grown and adult acting earlier. Story 16. My boyfriend is an only child and he loves competition. Growing up with a soccer team amount of siblings, I've hated competitiveness as an adult. I know he doesn't mean it, but it's like the missing component of competition you have growing up with siblings. But it could mean the opposite too. Story 17. If an only child wants something from another room, like a drink, a screwdriver, or their sunglasses, they will silently stand up and walk into the other room by themselves and get it. I can always tell siblings because anytime anyone relocates from one room to another, it's an opportunity for everyone to place an order. It's almost like a game to see what you can get your sibling to do for you. Story 18. Only use the bathroom excessively. Me, one of 5 in the family. Enter the bathroom. Use the bathroom. Use bathroom facilities. Shower. Shave. Leave the bathroom. Only enter the bathroom. Contemplate the meaning of life. Update their personal journal. Attempt the impossible. Use the bathroom. Use bathroom facilities. Shower. Shave. Engage in personal activities. Nap. Engage in personal activities again. Take a second shower. Balance their checkbook. Flick toothpaste on the mirror. Pour 2 gallons of water on the floor. Leave the bathroom. Story 19. My husband is an only child. I'm the middle of 3 girls. He thinks he can pause whatever we're watching for the 2-second task he wants to do. Excuse you, sir. No, I was watching it. Unless you need to go to the bathroom, the show goes on. Story 20. Only child here. I think a dead giveaway is that we tend to have tight bonds with our childhood pets. I might not have had sibling playmates, but I had dogs or cats, and they filled my life with the love and joy I didn't get from a large family. Story 21. They do not interrogate you when you leave the room and seem shocked when someone questions them for going to the bathroom or doing something similar. They also think that a small argument is equal to a falling out. No, I hate you today, but that is because I love you so much. Just because I called you a smooth-brained moron does not mean I believe it. Laughing out loud. Story 22. I think there are maybe some unfair generalities being made in these comments. Some are introverts, some are extroverts, some are selfish, some are not, same as people with siblings. There is something about only children, though. They tend to hold themselves a little differently, almost like they are unsure or a little too serious. And I'm not saying they can't joke around and maybe even be the most hilarious person in the room, but they don't always understand good-natured ribbing or insults. I had a roommate who was an only child who could be pretty self-absorbed and selfish, but she also had some major childhood trauma she was dealing with, so I'm sure that played a big part in why she was the way she was. I do think the only child thing was a piece of it, though. Story 23. As an only child, I really enjoy my alone time. I'm not sure if that's from introversion or being an only child, but I haven't seen it mentioned, so I figured I'd mention it. Story 24. They are much politer or they have a sense of entitlement. It's one or the other. Also, you cannot joke with them beyond a limit if they grew up as an only child. It's hurtful since they weren't essentially verbally abused by siblings growing up. I mentioned that my sister used to bite me in fights when we were kids, and my friend, who was an only child, was so shocked and looked at me like I was crazy. Meanwhile, my friend with siblings saw it as normal and said they used to try and throw each other down the stairs. Story 25. As an only child, I absolutely need quiet, alone time. I spent a lot of time alone as a kid, playing games alone in my room or the living room while my parents did whatever. If I go a day without quiet, alone time, like on vacation or visiting someone else's house, I start to lose my sanity. Story 26. Sometimes they only think of themselves, not in a selfish way, just used to only having their opinion and needs to worry about. Growing up with siblings, there was always compromise, discussions, and battles on what we got to do, eat, personal space, and play. Story 27. I still hide stuff as an adult when we have company because I don't want people touching them. I've also made it clear to my husband and kids not to touch certain things of mine. They're mine. I'm not going to lend them to you, so don't ask. If you want the same thing, put it on your Christmas list or buy it yourself. There are many things that I do share, but there are certain things that I won't. My mother taught me this when I was a child. She said if you don't want your cousins touching your toys, then you need to put them away and only leave the stuff out that you don't mind sharing. Story 28. I lived with two only children in our college apartment, still friends 15 years later, and it was interesting to see how it came out in different ways. One was very independent, could do most things themselves, and took it as a personal challenge to prove they could do something, such as cooking and home repairs. The other could barely make instant hot chocolate, true story, and his mom once told me he had never picked up a hammer. I thought she was joking at the time, but later realized it was true. They both have very strong confidence and are vocally self-centered. Story 29. My only child partner doesn't put as much value on things like birthdays as I do. I eventually figured out it's because he never had to compete for attention, so basically every day was his day. Story 30. My son is an only child, and when he was on his first soccer team at age 5, another kid dribbled the ball away. He looked at me like, "Did you just see that? He stole the ball." And he thought that was very impolite. But also, my only child was a college kid not into fraternities or their housing. He likes his own space and to decompress, so he lives with roommates, and they all have their own rooms. But one really cute thing is that at school one day, they gave all of the kids a small St. Louis Cardinals relay towel. My child noticed another kid didn't get a towel. Another kid took it. My child saw what happened and gave this other kid his towel. He said, "I know that kid doesn't have a lot of stuff, and I do. He can have it. That's okay." Story 31. Unsure if this is an only child thing, but when my friend did the whole punch buggy, yellow car thing for the first time, I was so confused, like, why are you hitting me right now? I didn't have a sibling hitting me on road trips. Story 32. I'm an only child. I've been told loads of times, "Oh, I would never have thought you were an only child." And it seems to be based on me not being an entitled, spoiled, whiny brat. On the other hand, I've known plenty of people with siblings who were entitled, spoiled, whiny brats. Looking at you, Sally. Story 33. As an only child, I've always struggled to make friends. Even now, as an almost 30-year-old adult, I am an awkward duck. I like my time alone and get overwhelmed being around people for too long. For example, I hated sleepovers as a teenager because, at the end of the day, I'd had enough and wanted my own space. Also, I am probably a bit too sensitive. I grew up without the teasing that siblings give, so when someone teases me, I can't really tell if they're kidding or not. Story 34. My friends and I were at a museum. Those of us with siblings would constantly look for others in the group, but the only children would wander off. If you're the only child, your parents can't leave without you, but if they have a backup, you're on your own once lost. Story 35. First Christmas with my only child wife. As many presents under the tree at her parents' house as there would have been under the tree in my 7-child house when I was growing up. Story 36. I'm really bad at most competitive arcade games, especially air hockey. I'm not competitive in general. I didn't have anyone to play with, really, besides my parents sometimes, but they went easy on me and weren't trying to annihilate me as siblings do. Story 37. I don't want to overgeneralize because I know this doesn't apply to all only children, but in my daycare, The kids who are only children talk and monopolize the conversation with the adults all day long. They interrupt, want to tell me everything all day long, and can't play quietly because they have to talk to me. It's like they are used to having their parents' undivided attention. And it's not a bad thing at all. It's just what I noticed. Whereas kids with siblings interact more with the other kids and don't need my attention constantly. Story 38. I guess the only child myths and stereotypes are still alive and well. I thought they were dying out with everyone having fewer kids and more only child households these days. As an only child, I can tell you almost all of these comments are off the mark or flat out wrong. What I noticed is that when someone finds out you're an only child, they will say one of two things. Oh, wow, I never would have guessed. You act nothing like an only child. Or B, oh, you're an only child, that explains a lot. Neither of these answers has anything to do with who you actually are, but how the person saying it feels about you in the moment and what their false impressions of an only child are. Both are insulting,